Hello everyone, my name is Chandrasekhar. In my today's course, I'll talk about Terraform prerequisites, which you need to configure even before you start using Terraform to create resources in AWS, Azure, or any sort of cloud vendor. In our last session, we learned about the usage of Terraform, some theoretical purpose of Terraform. Terraform is used for multiple different purposes. Terraform is used to create resources there or to make some changes in the existing resources, which is present in any of the cloud platform. And in order to do so, Terraform is we need to write the configuration file of Terraform. We need to write some provider block, and by using this provider block and configuration file, Terraform is actually going to touch or it's actually going to hit APIs of respective cloud vendors and is going to create resources for you. We will also see how those configuration files are written, how those providers are written, how those output blocks are written, and what are the advantages of having output blocks, how to manage local state file, how to manage state file remotely, and what are the advantages of saving or making a remote file remotely or making the remote file locally. We'll see the differences in between both also. But what are the prerequisites? Because now what's going to happen is you being a DevOps engineer, what you're going to do, consider that you are a DevOps engineer when you join an organization or if you're working in an organization, then you being a DevOps engineer, your basic job will be to write Terraform script. And like the way I created a short also before, wherein I clearly mentioned the importance of Terraform in this year so that automation can be achieved because nowadays almost all the companies are looking for someone who is expert in creating automation in hybrid cloud because most of the companies are moving towards hybrid cloud nowadays. Nobody wants to stick with one single cloud vendor. Having knowledge of Terraform, having knowledge of how to integrate Terraform with different sort of cloud vendor is very much important. As of now, I'm going to explain the integration of Terraform along with AWS cloud only. But in case if you want to understand integration of Terraform along with other cloud vendor, please put in comment section which cloud vendor you are working on. I'll create videos for those cloud vendors also. Okay, so let's proceed. So now you being a DevOps engineer, your basic job will be to write Terraform script, because by writing Terraform script, you will be able to achieve what? You will be able to achieve automation. And this is the buzzword. This is the buzzword for very long. And certainly in 2025, it's going to play a vital role. So you being a DevOps engineer will write Terraform code, and this Terraform, by using this Terraform code, you will be able to achieve automation across hybrid cloud. And as of now, we'll talk specifically about AWS cloud. So in AWS cloud, you are going to you are going to create some sort of automation by using Terraform. Now what's going to happen? So Terraform will be certainly making some changes. Perhaps it will create resources like EC2 instances, S3 bucket, RDS, DynamoDB. It will create any resource for which you are writing configuration file for your writing script there in your Terraform. But for that to happen, AWS Cloud should authenticate Terraform to make some changes. Because say in case if you have to create any resource logging into AWS Management Console, first you have to put in your username, your password, some things by means of which AWS will be able to authenticate you that yes, you are the genuine user, you are authorized to make these all changes in this specific account, in this specific AWS account. Similar to that, for Terraform to perform changes there in AWS Cloud in any specific account there in AWS Cloud, you must have to authenticate Terraform. AWS should authenticate Terraform, and in order to authenticate Terraform, there has to be some username and password. Now, the username and password which you are using to log in into AWS Management Console is the plain text username and password, isn't it? It's the simple plain text username and password. But when you are authenticating it programmatically, you are not going to use those plain text username and password because it's not safe. For that, what AWS says is I'll create some sort of security credentials, which is much different from your login username and password. And that we are going to learn today how to create that credential. So what we are going to learn today, we are going to learn couple of things today. We'll first learn how to install AWS CLI on your machine. Then we will learn about IAM user creation. IAM is something which is a AWS service which helps us to create users which is different from your normal login user. Other than that, we'll also talk about policy assignment to user, by means of which user will be able to user is authorized to perform certain function. You might not want to allow a user to create any resources there in AWS Management Console. You just want to provide read-only permissions, just view permissions to certain users. For to certain users, you want to allow permissions to create resources, but you want to just restrict it to only compute resources. Perhaps the user will be able to create only EC2 instances, or only load balancer, or only EKS, and not databases, and not storage services like S3 bucket and others. To other users, you want to restrict only to S3 and not to compute services. You will be able to restrict those things by using policy assignment feature, which AWS offers. Second thing is, now we will learn about how to generate security credential. And like the way I said, this generation of security credential will be different from your username and password, because your username and password is a plain text username and password, which is very risky to use programmatically. Next thing is, configure user credential in configure AWS credentials in local. So now you have generated, you have created those credentials, those security credentials in AWS. But now you have to let your Terraform know, you have to let your CLI also know that yes, I am authorized to use it, I am eligible to use it. For that, you have to make some configuration there in your command line in your local machine also. And when I say local machine, it could be anything. It could be your PowerShell command prompt in case of your Windows user. If you are a Linux, Mac, or Windows user, then you can use Visual Studio Code, which is a common IDE we use nowadays to write any sort of script. Okay, and at the end, we will also see what is the directory structure of security credentials. Where is actually these security credentials saved there in your machine? That also we are going to see. So yes, we are going to talk about these 6 components today. So let's begin. First, we will learn about how to install AWS CLI. So now this is pretty much important. If you are working on any of the cloud vendor, any of the cloud platform, then you first have to install respective cloud vendor CLI. Then and only then you will be able to you will be able to use that specific cloud vendor, and you will be able to make some changes there in the cloud platform programmatically by execution of certain commands. And this is true for any of the cloud vendor. Now I'm going to explain you for AWS, but say in case if you're Azure user, if you are a Google user, you have to install AZCLI. For Azure also you will have to install the Google Cloud's CLI. For Google, for making any changes there in GCP platform also. So now let's try to learn how to how to install AWS CLI in your local first. So in order to install, what you have to do is, you have to just go to Google, and in Google just type install AWS CLI or AWS CLI download. As you will install AWS CLI download, the first option which opens in front of you, which says installing or updating to the latest version of the AWS CLI. Click on that link. As you click on that link, you end up opening the page which contains installation instructions of AWS CLI. And this is across all the 3 type of operating system. In Linux, any distribution of operating system; in Mac OS, in Windows, any distribution of operating system. If you do have any operating system, if you do have, you can the this document contains link, or this document contains steps to install AWS CLI in all type of operating systems and different distributions in Linux operating system also. So now if you're a Windows user, or if you're a Mac user, then if you're a Mac user, just follow these steps to install it in Mac. And in case if you are a Linux user, then follow these steps to install Linux. You see, there are simple commands which you need to execute. You can follow the command line installer. You can follow command line Linux RPM based things also. You can install by using snap packages also. You can execute some curl command and install it. You see, all the steps are clearly mentioned. You can just curl and download the zip package for your AWS CLI version 2. In case if zip is not installed in your machine, then you have to just execute the command to install zip and unzip this package, and then execute this command to install AWS in your Linux machine. My machine is Windows, so I'll be following Windows instruction to install. So now I go to Windows, and in Windows it says that download and run the AWS CLI MSI installer for Windows. So it is asking me to install MSI. So now as I execute, as I just click on this, you see it is just it has just installed this MSI installer for me. I've already installed it before. There's the reason it's showing one, but since for you it will be for the first time you would have installed it, then it won't show one beside this AWS CLI version 2 MSI package. So now, once you install, Windows do have its own wizard. So just click on install and it will take you to next, install and finish page to install entire AWS CLI. So once AWS CLI is installed, you will be able to execute any of the AWS command here. So here I have installed it, and this is my command line which I am opening there in Visual Studio Code. This is my IDE where I'm going to execute all the commands. So here, if I execute any command, for example, AWS, then you see it's saying, okay, AWS help and AWS this. It doesn't say that AWS is not a kind of unrecognized package in your machine. If it's not installed, then it will say that I'm not able to recognize AWS command. Please install it first, and then and only then I'll be able to tell you anything about this specific command. But for me, since it's already installed, it's not giving me any such message. Now, once this part is done, after that, what we have to do is your AWS installation is complete. So what we have learned how to install AWS CLI by using MSI package in Windows. If you're using a Mac user or a Linux user, there are different steps. I'll put the link for this specific document there in the description section of this video so that you can just follow along. Now, once you have installed it, then what next? Next is to create IAM user so that you will be able to grant some permissions to that IAM user, and that IAM user, by using that IAM user, you will be able to authenticate Terraform to make any changes there in your AWS account. Now, I'll be also showing you how to write those Terraform configuration file. That will be my next video wherein I'll be explaining everything about that. But first, let's learn how to just grant permissions to Terraform so that Terraform will be able to easily create resources for you in AWS account. Now, in order to do that, you have to go to a service which AWS offers. So in search, as you type IAM, in search, as you type IAM, you see the first option which opens is IAM. As you click on that option, this page opens. You see at the left side, it says Identity and Access Management. IAM stands for Identity and Access Management. It's a service which AWS offers, by means of which you will be able to manage users permissions, policy, all the restrictions which you can apply on users access. Everything you will be able to manage by using IAM. So now, once you do this, at the left side under access management section, you see a number of different options. And one of the options which you can see is users. You click on that option. As you click in that option, it says it will just list down all the users. So now it will say that, okay, fine. As of now, it's showing me that I don't have any user created under this and in this account. So now I'll create a user. In order to create a user, at the right top side, you see create user. Click on that option. And the first thing which it's asking me is, as I clicked on create user, the first thing which it's asking me is username. So I'm going to give some username. I'll say Terraform user. So this is my first user. I don't want to give any space. Just Terraform user is the user. Next thing, what it asks, it says provide user access to AWS Management Console. But I'm creating this user to just to execute Terraform command programmatically. I don't want this user to access AWS Management Console, right? I just want this user credentials to execute Terraform commands locally by using program, which I'm going to write, by using script, which I'm going to write. So I don't want to provide any access to this user to AWS Management Console. So don't check the box. Click on next after that. As you click on next, it says attach user to group, copy permissions, and attach policies directly. So I'll choose the option attach policies directly. Now to begin with, what I'll do is I'll just give admin access. You see second option from top, admin access. What it will do as I'll grant this admin access policy to this Terraform user will have access, admin like access, will have access to do anything, will have access to create user, delete user, modify user, or create resources, delete resources, modify resources, anything it will be able to, this user will be able to do. But Since we did not provide any access on management console, we can do only these things programmatically, right? We'll see that. We'll see by executing some of the AWS commands also, say in case if it has to, if it is having capability to list down all the resources or not. So I'm just going to check the option as administrator access at this point, and then I'll click on next. As I click on next, what happens is it's just giving me the option to review and create a kind of dry run. It's just saying, okay, fine. You have just chosen all the options, but do you want to review it before you create it? Yes, I want to review it in order to be on safe side. Because, for example, if you have created some user and if you unwantedly assigned administrator access policy to it, which you don't want, then this will be the place where you will be able to see. Here it says that permission summary. In permission summary, it clearly says that the name of the permission which you are granting is administrator access. So you will be easily able to track also here whether the permission which you are granting is the one which is intended or not, or you are doing something by mistake. After that, you click on create user. So as I clicked on create user, in few seconds, it says that create user, it says that entity not found, and it says entity not found. Um, Okay, I think it took few seconds for it to create that. Those errors were just temporary or was a kind of glitch. But now you see those errors are gone and it says that I do have a user which is with the username as Terraform user, which is created now. So now once the user is created, you click on the username because now my this job is done. I have assigned the IAM user, and then I have also assigned the policy to user. For now, I have assigned the admin policy to this user. Now, what happens? After you have created the user, next thing which you need to understand is how to generate the security credentials. Because eventually you are going to use the security credential which is generated for the user, Terraform user, so that this credential can be used by Terraform to create any resources in AWS cloud. So now how to generate, and this security credential will be different from your, because perhaps by the time you logged in into this AWS account, you have provided some username or some email and then password and then MFA to log in. But now this security credential is going to be different from the one which you have used. And this is very important for security purpose also. So now you click on the user. As I click on the user, what it says me is it it takes me to this page, and the I do have multiple tabs. I do have tabs permissions. This permission says, okay, fine. There is administrator access which you have assigned to this specific user. Groups should be blank because I did not assign it to any group. Tags is also blank because I did not assign any tab. And next is security credential. So now under security credential, there is something which is called access keys. As of now, since the user is newly created, it does not has any access keys associated to it. So what I'm going to do is, in order to generate a security credential, I will create access keys. So now you click on create access key. You see here at the right side, I do have an option at the center also. I do have an option to create access key. Click on any of the two options. So now as I clicked on that option, it says what you want to do with this access key. Whether you want to use it for local command, for command line interface, or local code, or application running on an AWS compute service, or a third party service, or application running outside AWS. For me, as of now, I want to use it for command line interface. I'm just going to take this radio button. And as I clicked on this radio button, it says it's just asking me to check this box. I understand the above recommendation and want to proceed to create an access key. And yes, I do understand the above recommendations, because with my will, I have chosen the option as command line interface. Now scroll to the bottom and click on next. As I click on next, it's asking me, okay, while creating, do you want to describe it for tag value? I'll say yes, I want to create it for Terraform use. Okay, and now create access key. Now it has created access key. It has created access key and it is created secret access key, and both the things I need. So access key you can consider as a username, and secret access key, you see it's been hidden. It's hidden. It's just hidden. It's not as in it's all stars. It's actually hidden. If I click on show, it will actually show it. Okay, so now access key, consider it as a username, and secret access key, consider it as a password. Now we have to use this only. So now what we have learned till now, we have learned how to install AWS CLI, then we have learned how to create IAM user, and then we have assigned a policy which is admin policy to this user. And next, we have generated security credentials, which this user will be able to use in order to execute any Terraform command. And while we generated the security credentials, it is giving me two things. It is giving me a username. It is giving me two things. It is basically giving me a username and it is giving me a password, right? It is giving me a password. So username is in the form of access key. Access key. Access key is like a username, you can say. And next thing which you got is you got secret access key. Secret access key you can consider as a password. So secret access key you can consider as a password for yourself, right? Secret access key you can consider as a password for yourself. So these both the values you're going to get. So now after you got it, next is to configure AWS credential, because as of now you have generated things there in AWS Management Console. You have to bring those values to your local also, because most of the time you will be executing these commands from your local command line interface itself. Now how to bring it? In order to bring it in command line interface, since you have already installed AWS, now I will be able to execute some of the AWS command also. So the command which is used to configure AWS credential in your local is AWS configure. As you hit enter, use after you have generated the security key and access key, then you have to execute AWS configure as the command. As you execute the command, the first thing which it's asking is AWS access key ID. Now you know that you will just go back to your AWS management console, and there the access key is nothing but access key ID. It's not asking for security access key, secret access key ID. It's just asking for access key ID. So you have to just copy this. As you copy this and you come back here, you paste that here. And you paste that here. I think it's not copied properly, so I'll have to go back and copy it again and come back here and paste it. Yes, it's pasted. And then it's asking for AWS secret access key. Now it's clearly mentioning there is no dilemma, there is no hidden thing. It's asking, okay, fine, give a secret access key. You should not get confused whether you should paste access key or secret access key. Now I'm going to copy the secret access key and I'll paste it here. Now again hit enter. It's asking what is the default region where you want to create. So I want to create all the resources there because I live in India. So I want to create resources there in India, that India zone, which is AP South one, which is Mumbai, and hit enter. And now it's asking what is the default JSON format, default format. I'll mention it as JSON. Okay, you can mention JSON, you can mention YAML, that's fine. I've mentioned it as JSON format at this point. So now what happened after you have mentioned this? So as you have done these all steps, you have configured your security credentials in local. Okay, you have configured, but now you there must be a question in your mind. Okay, fine, I have configured AWS credentials in local, but when you say local, it must be saved somewhere there in your local. And yes, you are right in that thought, because yes, it is saving somewhere in your local. So there is a directory structure. As you have executed this command, there is a directory which it has created, which is in your home directory. It has created a hidden directory which is with the name .aws. It has created this .aws here. So now what it is going to do here is it has created a credential. You see, just a minute back, 11:33. The time is 11:33. So it has created just now two files, just updated two files, config and credentials. Now let's see the content of this, both the files. Let's first see the content of credentials file. Credentials file. So credentials file contains, you see, this is the access key ID. If you'll compare B5VZ, if you'll compare with this B5VZ, it's exactly the same access key ID which you passed just now from AWS Management Console. And the next thing is AWS secret key, which is exactly the same which you copied from AWS Management Console. So as you did not create this file, you have just executed AWS configure command. And this AWS configure command in turn has created this file credentials with the name credentials, and it has pasted these two values, access key ID and AWS secret access key in it, and it is saved under a profile. It has created a profile, and this is the default profile. You can create a profile with different name also, but by default AWS creates a profile which is with the name default. Now it has created another file also, which is config. Now let's see what is present in config file. In config file, it is having what is the region you want to create, what is the default region which you have chosen. It's not as in you cannot change the region in your Terraform code. You can change a region also separately in your Terraform code. This is the default region which Terraform now will understand. Okay, if you're not providing any region, I'll be creating resources in this default region, which is AP South 1. But in case if you want to create resources in some other region, because it might happen that when you are using Terraform to create resources, you want to create in US East 1 maybe, or you want to create in some other region, maybe some Europe region, maybe a Singapore region, which is different from AP South 1. So yes, you will have flexibility to change the region there in your Terraform code. And again, output is JSON, which is quite the same thing which you have given. Okay, so now you know how to configure the user, how to configure credentials, and what is the directory structure also for credentials. You know this also. Now let's see. So you don't understand, you don't think that, okay, fine, he has just created the credential, he has just set this up, but as of now, with the command, he is not able to access anything there from AWS Management Console. Let's see. I will execute a command, AWS S3LS. It is a simple AWS command which is used to list down all the S3 bucket which is created. And you see, it gives me an output. This is the S3 bucket. If I go to my AWS Management Console and if I search for S3 bucket, which is, if I search for the S3 bucket, it will be able to show me, okay, the S3 bucket is in the same name which you are able to see in your management, in your command line. So quite the same S3 bucket you will be able to see in your management console also, right? So what you have learned how to integrate your command line interface with your AWS management console. Now you see it's the same S3 bucket which you are seeing in your local machine. Okay, so that's it for today's videos. If you liked my videos, don't forget to share my videos with others also, so that others will also be able to get advantage out of my videos. They will be able to learn something and support my channel by subscribing it. Thank you everyone for watching.